Kia ora students, if you're here that means you want to learn how to write a plan when you're working with the novel The Giver in Year 10. This is one of the more simple tutorials that I've got, so if you're an advanced student then you should be heading over to the other playlists to really challenge yourself. Okay, so as you can see we have already chosen a question and we've already worked out what the question is asking. If you haven't done that yet, I really don't recommend you watch the video yet. I think you should pause now, go and do that with your own question, and then come back for step 3, planning your essay. Okay, that looks like a lot of words, but let's break it down. What I want you to do when you've chosen your question, you've worked out what it's actually asking of you, is I want you to reword each part of the question as a statement specific to the text that you are dealing with, in this case the giver. So let's look at the top half there. Describe at least one event that was a turning point in the written text. At the moment, that's kind of a meaningless statement until you really look at it really closely. But we could reword it really simply to make it apply to the giver, which will make it really easily understandable for us in the context of our Year 10 English class. And that could look like this. When Jonas becomes the receiver of memories, it is a turning point in the giver. Now if you look at those two statements, describe at least one event that was a turning point in the written text. When Jonas becomes the receiver of memories, it is a turning point in the giver. Those two statements pretty much say the same thing, except that one is really vague and unhelpful, and one is specific to the story that we are working with, and when we look at it, it immediately makes sense to us. Now let's look at the second part of the question. Explain why the turning point was important in the text as a whole. And now I've reworded that. This turning point is important because it allows Jonas to grow up, learn about his community, and become different from everyone else. So again, I've taken a statement that's kind of meaningless unless you really look closely at it, and I've turned it into something that we can easily grasp. We understand what it means, we understand that Jonas grows up, we understand that he learns all the secrets, we understand that he becomes different from everybody else. So then when you put those two pieces together, you've kind of got a plan already, it's just not very specific yet. So take the question out of it and just look at the two statements with the highlighting. When Jonas becomes the receiver of memories, it is a turning point in the giver. This turning point is important because it allows Jonas to grow up, learn about his community, and become different from everybody else. So you've kind of got this skeleton of a plan already. If someone was to say to you, how are you going to answer your essay question? You could say those two sentences and give them a really good idea of what it is that you're going to talk about in your essay. Now let's break it down a little bit and see how that's going to look like in terms of an actual essay plan. So we've got the question at the top there with the bold writing, and then I've put, now let's make it sound a bit better. Now I've got those two statements pushed together. A turning point in the novel The Giver is when Jonas becomes the receiver of memories during the ceremony of 12. A little bit more detail there. This is important in The Giver because this turning point enables Jonas to become different from everyone else, learn about his community, and grow up. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3. How many paragraphs are you going to write in your essay? 3. So you've basically got your topic statements or points for your 3 different paragraphs. Now we get to the trickiest part of this whole thing, which is called a thesis statement. Now, if you're somebody who really struggles with your essay writing, you might want to skip this bit. Or you might find that it actually gives you a lot of clarity. Listen to me speaking for the next couple of minutes. If it doesn't make sense to you, either write down a question to ask me about it, or don't stress about it. If it doesn't help you in the way that your brain thinks, that's fine. It's just a way that I have found it has helped people in the past. The word thesis statement, it kind of just means what are you trying to prove in your essay? You use the word thesis in all sorts of different disciplines and subject areas. Mostly in science, whenever you do an experiment, before you start you come up with a thesis, like hot water melts sugar faster than cold water. And then you go about proving whether or not that thesis or that theory is true or not. So that's what I want to do with this essay. I want to come up with a statement and then I want to prove whether or not it's true. So all that stuff there in the middle, that's the same as the slide before. I won't read it again for you. But the question is, what does all that add up to? So you can see I've highlighted the words become different, learn, and grow up. And to me, all of that adds up to Jonas is made the receiver of memories and goes from childhood to adulthood. So remember, connecting back to our question, the turning point is that he becomes the receiver of memories. And we've been asked to talk about why that is important. Well, I've got 3 different reasons why it's important. Those are listed there, 1, 2, 3. But overall, to me, that equals that he goes from childhood to adulthood. And so the thesis statement, the idea that I'm going to prove in this essay to be correct, is that Jonas is made the receiver of memories and he goes from childhood to adulthood. So I'm going to find some evidence to prove that. As I said before I started talking about this little bit, this isn't absolutely necessary, and I don't expect you to do it during your actual exam, but it could really help you to clarify what it is you're talking about in your overall essay and how your 3 paragraphs connect to each other. Now we get to the part that actually looks really like a plan. We've got our thesis statement there, and we've got my restating of the questions that we came up with earlier. And then I've split it into 2 columns. On the left-hand side, we've got those 3 paragraphs that we're going to talk about. The turning point enables Jonas to become different from everyone else, learn about his community, and grow up. On the right-hand side, I've got my evidence. The first quote that I've got there is, "For the first time in his 12 years of life, Jonas felt separate, different." And that proves that he becomes different from everyone else when he becomes the receiver of memories. I'm not going to give you the other 2 quotes because a lot of you, I'm sure, will be following this plan. And it's your job now to find 2 quotes that prove that when he becomes the receiver of memories, it lets him learn about his community. And when he becomes the receiver of memories, it lets him grow up. This is what I would absolutely expect you to do in your actual exam. would not want you to start writing your essay unless you had your 3 points written down on the left-hand side, or however you want to visually lay it out. This is just what works for me, but you should have your 3 points written down and the 3 quotes that are going to prove those 3 points. A lot of the time what I find is that students find evidence in the book and they get really excited, and then I have to say, hey, wait, does that quote actually prove the point that you're trying to make? So it's really important to ask yourself this question. Okay, I found the quote. For the first time in his 12 years of life, Jonas felt separate, different. Does that show that when he becomes the receiver of memories, he becomes different from everybody else? Yes, it does show that, because Lois Lowry is directly saying that Jonas felt different. So yes, my quote works this time. But you've got to do that every time for your own pieces of evidence that you find, because so often I find that students, they find a quote, and when you look at it, it's actually from a completely different part of the novel that is completely unrelated to what it is that you're talking about. It might have words that vaguely connect to what you're discussing, but it doesn't actually directly prove your point. So you guys have to become really good detectives and really good at finding evidence to support your points in your thesis statement. Once you've got that plan in place, you can't fail. You've got this structure to fall back on, so when you get lost in your essay writing, which so often happens, you can go back to that plan and say, hey, where am I up to? I'm up to paragraph 3, I've written down my example, what's the next step? Where am I heading towards? If you don't do that plan, you're just blindly writing. You don't know where you're heading. You don't really understand what it is you're trying to say, how you're connecting to the question. One of the biggest struggles I have is when students ask me for help and they launch straight into the question that they have for me, but they don't even know which essay question they are doing. It is absolutely fundamental to not only know what essay question you're doing, but to know what the 3 points are going to be that you make in your 3 paragraphs, and what your 3 pieces of evidence are that will prove those 3 points. If you don't have that, you shouldn't begin writing your essay. So you should be stopping watching this now and actually going off and doing that for your own essay, going through step by step. And remember, these are long videos. Go back and re-watch certain sections. Pause it, rewind it, replay it. Or you might just pause it so that you can read the words that are on the screen, because me going blah 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 might be distracting. So you need to use this video to guide you through that process of planning your essay. Write down any questions for me if you have them, so that when you come into class you can check in and say, hey, did I do the right thing? Or I didn't quite understand what you meant by this because you were mumbling on about something. So don't hesitate to write those questions down and ask me. Good luck with your planning.